Sorry, I can't.
Yes.
So you're gonna be, you're instead of years, these two hearing aids. You know, when you're ready, come on down. Afternoon, everybody. Hi, guys.
Hello.
So I'm the Ned for today. You can say better looking and smarter. You can go ahead and say it. But I'm filling in for Ned today. So we're gonna kick off this meeting and call it to order. It is 4:01. We're gonna do a roll call. Would you like to do that,
Sure.
please?
Ned Galloway or Michael Pruitt, Michael Payne,
Here.
Lloyd Snook,
Here.
Bree Murray Key, Ron Williams,
Here.
Rachel Jones, Jesse Rutherford or Ernie Reed, Diantha McKeel, Margaret Claire,
Here.
Keith Smith,
Here.
Luke Rourke, Fitzgerald Barnes, Emily Dreyfus or Emily Smith, Kurt Kiesecker,
Here.
William Park or Alice Fletcher, Peter Holman.
I'm here.
Okay, George Ballou,
Yes.
Cameron Moore, Michelle Wamsley,
Present.
Shayla Washington, Sunshine Mathan,
Present.
Colette Sheehy,
I am. I'll let you.
Alice, all right, Alice Raucher, Annette Hyde, Kim Highland,
Here.
Dave Norris,
Here.
Luis Oyola,
Here.
John Sales or Kathleen Glenn Matthews, and Greg Pope.
Here. Thank you. So it looks like we have a couple of folks tuning in remotely, so I believe we have to do a motion to, and I do not have a copy of that with me, but
A motion to allow them to participate electronically.
we have to do a motion to allow folks to participate remotely or electronically. So I think I need a motion for that, a second, and then we'll do a roll call vote or just a simple vote.
We can do a simple vote, but we do need Ron Williams to state where he's located and his reason for not being.
Ron does not look like the Caribbean, but you can chime in if you would like.
I am participating remotely from Standardsville, Virginia.
And your reason is personal or medical?
Medical.
Thank you.
Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Anybody else remotely?
No, that's all.
All right, so we need a motion to allow Ron to participate remotely. Got it, a second? Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Ron, you can play. All right, comments from the public. If anybody in the public would like to say anything, we would have 3 minutes to do it today. Anybody from the public want to say anything? No?
I am Ron Williams, alternate of Green County.
Oh,
From Boston, so.
You're welcome to sit at the
Yeah, sit
table.
at the table, come on, join us.
John McCollum.
So. Yeah, gives you lawyer at the end. So we have some new members, so how would you like to handle introducing new members, just for them to introduce themselves, or do you want to do a round table introducing everybody?
Well, and I think Greg would like to introduce, Kurt.
We'll start with Greg then.
Let me first say this is my last board meeting, and I want to thank everybody at the table for having included me for the first 6 years of this great organization. It's time for some fresh blood, some young fresh blood. Kurt Kiesecker has been very, very, very active in the affordable housing design community for a very long time. His term is PRW, the project group still that. And Kurt has thoughtfully, kindly agreed to take my seat, which is the design seat on the board. So, Kurt, why don't you introduce yourself just a little?
Well, thanks, Greg. I'm happy to be here. As Greg said, I've worked with New York as the architects. We've been working with a number of folks in the room for many years on different projects, and I'm happy to join you. My experience is kind of highlighted by some time that I spent on the planning commission in the rooms here. So I'm familiar with this room and happy to be part of the group for the veteran of our community. So thanks for having me. Thank you, Greg, for the opportunity.
Masquerade was young.
Yes,
I'm saying young.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
So I do want to take an opportunity to thank you, Greg, because you were a founding member and put a ton of time and ton of hours in. I know I'm personally going to miss you, the banter for sure. But I miss your insight, what you bring to the table. So, but it's a smart move to move Kurt in here and see what he can share and make us all a little bit smarter. But thank you. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
doing that.
Thank you.
Anybody else new that may not know anybody else in the room? Sir?
Joe McCloskey, representing Greene County, Vice Chair of the Greene County Planning Commission. So I actually did join remotely the last first time in person.
Oh, glad to have you. Anybody else that wants to do a quick introduction of themselves? All right.
I want to make a quick note, that, Colette Sheehy has stepped down from the RHP. And Alice Rauscher has been appointed by the university to take her place on the RHP. And that also means that we have a vacancy on the executive committee. We're not gonna, do anything about that today, but I just want to bring that to everyone's attention.
Well, I've heard Alice volunteer.
Did you?
I heard you volunteered.
I did not yet. I think he needs some adjustment.
Are you hearing me?
I could be making things up, in other words.
Oh.
We also,
I will consider.
we have another new member, Luke Rourke, who was appointed back in December, but was not able to make it to the beginning of this meeting. He should be at the networking event tonight. And also Fitzgerald Barnes from Fluvanna County, Louisa County. Oh,
Sorry.
thank you for correcting me. I don't believe is joining us today, but has also been recently appointed to the RHP.
So he's also a Marine, so you're gonna have at least two Marines up there. All righty, we're gonna go into consent agenda. Is that it?
Yes.
We're gonna go into the consent agenda, which is the minutes and the financials. They're in the package. I think everybody had an opportunity to read them, so unless there's some additions or changes, the financials or the minutes will be looking for a first, a second, and approve it, and we'll mark our way down the agenda.
Yes,
The minutes,
the minutes were a separate handout. Did you get a copy? Does anyone need a copy of the minutes?
Thank you.
I will say one quick thing about the financials. You'll note that there's a $16,000 contribution to the housing summit, which is happening tomorrow. The housing summit was able to raise more than their funding goal, which means that we do not need to transfer all $16,000 over. So some of that will be coming back into the RHP's budget. So we won't be quite as close to spending down all of the time and funds that are currently allocated for the RHP through the end of June 30th.
So everybody knows tomorrow is the summit. So thank you for everybody who's participating, and thank you for everybody who's going to show up. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but definitively thank you to staff. One of the goals, as far as the budget is concerned, is that the summit needed to be self-funding. And it did better than that. It produced about $4,000 to $5,000 $100,000 more money than what we needed, and as Ruth has said, we're moving that money over to pay some of our operational expenses. So kudos to staff and kudos to everybody on the team to go ahead and do that, to actually create a pretty awesome summit, which I think you guys will find out tomorrow or agree tomorrow at the end of the day. But to do it and have a little bit of money left over is always a win. So kudos to those folks. All right, minutes and financials, and any other questions or comments?
You were there.
Pretty sure I said something. This Jesse called me after I left, I left early, so maybe that doesn't count. But, anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, we can correct that you were present.
Or you can just look at that there.
Well, this is awesome. We have a full house. This is good stuff. So we're gonna make it at one particular edit, any other edits on minutes or financials? All right, still looking for a first and a second. We got one. I got a second, please. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. What the heck? Thank you. All right, no action items today. So this meeting is gonna kind of be a continuation of the executive committee meeting. So for those who were in the executive committee meeting a week or so ago, raise our hands who participated in that. Okay, just the two of us. So what we did, and we're gonna hand this over to Caden to kind of walk us through this, but this was and probably since the beginning, the best executive session we've ever been part of. Greg, I thought you were part of it, were you not?
No, I should have left it over. That was shit.
Well, I'm just so used to seeing that pretty face. So one of the great things about that is, and what Caden did for us, and so what we're gonna be doing now is more of a work session format, which is kind of a enhanced roundtable. What Caden's gonna do is he's gonna walk us through the document that's in your handout about the regional housing strategic plans, and what he's going to do is start asking us questions about what we think about this body and where it should go. I need you to jump in when I go sideways, okay? Where we think this body's gonna go and try to create a more holistic strategic plan moving forward. And I will add, the summit tomorrow is gonna be a big part of that formation of where we're going forward as a body, and the items we're looking to try to tackle and the items we're trying to solve. So that's the big overview of what we're gonna try to do here for the next almost an hour going forward on it. And without any further ado, I'm gonna introduce you to Caden, and then you're gonna jump in and we'll take it from there. So it's more of a free, we'll follow sort of protocol, but you know, if you have a thought, let's hear it.
He thought was.
That's what I thought you were there.
Yeah, you offered you said a couple of weeks last.
Great, don't confuse me with the facts, okay? Okay, thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you all for everyone who did come here today, just making the time to be here, the effort. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the AmeriCorps Bishop of the TJPDC. And pretty much what we're going to do today is just run through some new ideas, revise some ideas. So my bad, Greg. Just workshop session, you know, just generate some new ideas in terms of the direction we want the RHP to go. And to start off, I was going to start with the packet that was attached to the agenda today. If you were to read the first paragraph, to strengthen the effectiveness and impact of the regional housing partnership, we must prioritize deeper engagement, expand the expertise, and more structured collaboration. And then below that, you will see that some of the key themes from the executive committee meeting For those who haven't seen it, some of the main points we talked about were enhanced one-on-one group and group conversations. I think we all can agree that that needs to, improve in terms of dialogue that's happening between the members of the RHP. And second of that, greater community engagement. One of the ideas that came about of that was to have more lunch sessions, more casual sessions where people can gather rather than the more compact meeting sessions in terms of the more structured styles. And the third point of that, which we're going to touch more on later in this packet, is to expand the RHP membership and more expertise. I think this last part is really going to be huge for us in terms of the next steps we need to go, because it really starts with us and who's a part of the membership and who's sharing the ideas. If the whole point is to gather information and resources, then I think who's a part of that is really going to be impactful. But before we get into the actionable steps, I just want to start off with some general questions for you guys. It's not in the packet, but I'm just going to ask you guys straightforward because I think it's going to be the same questions that were asked in the RHP Executive Committee meeting. And for the first thing I want to know is, what aspects of the RHP do you find most valuable in supporting your work? Currently, what are the things that you guys found useful, some things you want to extend, and some things that we should keep moving forward when we are finalizing our next strategic plan?
So jump in, Ron, if you want to chime in, just do your raise the hand feature, and I think Ruth or somebody will keep an eye on it. So who would like to jump in first? Do I have to call on people? Is that what I got to do? Greg, since you're leaving, you're going to start first.
Repeat the question. I did.
It's the same one that we had at the executives that said,
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be things that you want to keep. It can be things that you want to change as well. So it could be anything. You can say, oh, I would like longer Zoom sessions or more Zoom sessions, or some aspect of that where it can impact our meeting times. I know Kim also mentioned that where we meet for our meetings could possibly be changed as well. So it could be anything that's on your mind in terms of things that you guys kind of want to recommend us, implement moving forward, but it's really up to you.
So I said the obvious. I think the greatest strength of this group is the fact that this very diverse group that comes from every facet of addressing affordable housing gets a chance to know one another around the table. And I think the greatest benefits that I can think of that have come out of this group is the asides that happen because we all know each other through this group. And that's about networking.
And that's on the first point. That's where that first point was created from. Your input that you gave in the executive committee meeting was the more one-on-one and group conversations, and that's that sub point underneath of it is encourage more direct dialogue among the RHP members to foster strong relationships and improve our collaboration. So I think you hit it right on the nail in terms of, obviously, I think we do need to improve our communication between each of our members. Any other input?
I really liked the topical conversations that we were having, kind of going on with that conversation, so I didn't attend I think there was an urban one, but we ran a couple of rural ones, and I think that there are some very specific focuses that we could have in affordable housing that, that maybe we overlap a lot in our concerns for that, like Albemarle, for example, I have a lot of rural areas and also very much some city areas too. So they might overlap, but that's one of the things, rural versus urban that we felt was kind of sticking out, and homelessness was the other one. And so there may be other topics that we were gonna delve into and have more conversations about, but specifically not just in this general meeting.
And bring that creativity flowing by working with people who are not necessarily in our usual circle. And for you and I, just in the top that's overlapping with a bunch of people who are in the government world and in the for-profit world. It's very helpful to hear what everybody's working on. Hear more about how projects are set up and what the different areas have going on. The more we learn about how they're able to structure those projects is helpful because we can pick up on some of those pieces and those things.
So one of the things I hear all the time, when we particularly do the round table, I hear this from Ned and some of the other electeds, is that the education that happens between the electeds and say the for-profits or the nonprofits, to your point, Kim. What does it take to get something from point A to point B? And I remember in our executive session, Colette was a bit frustrated about the process for the affordable housing and site plan and so forth and so on. So one of the benefits of what we do is we start cross-sharing people's experiences, and then we learn. And then sometimes we find that maybe we actually have the same problems, right? The for-profit side of the side of the house has the same problems or concerns or struggles as the nonprofit side of the house. And so I just wanted to play off of that a little bit.
The next question I want to ask was also asked in the executive committee meeting, but is in regards to, strategic priorities and future focuses for the RHP. And just to go along with the point you made in terms of the rural versus urban, what emerging housing challenges should the RHP prioritize in this coming year? What innovative housing solutions have you seen elsewhere that we could implement locally? And how should the strategic plan and tangible goals be established? I know there's a lot right there, and if you need me to repeat anything, I will. But pretty much what it's asking is, where should the direction in terms of focus be more leaning towards in terms of things we want to get done in RHP?
Can I ask, do we have an active member from the homes?
We used to, it used to
And she's
be,
still, I think, named, but
I don't know if participation is there. I don't know.
Specifically, Shayla, representing the Blue Ridge Area Coalition for the Homeless.
well, anyone from any organization, but yes. And she hasn't been participating. There seems to me, and you said this just a couple of minutes ago, we have 3 areas of concern that this group has. It's urban issues, it's rural issues, and it's homelessness. And we're missing a voice focused on the homeless. And those 3 issues, I think, are obvious subjects around which we could build topic-specific seminars or some form of facilitating group to facilitate conversations on those 3
And I think
subjects.
the rural areas were previously a little disengaged with that because we didn't have the homeless issues that they had in the urban areas. We have them now. Because it's so bad that we just found another pocket in Louisiana this week. So it is shocking how much we have in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Green County.
Yeah, looking for it.
Yeah, but they keep popping up now. They didn't used to pop up before. And we have the added component, where we lack the facilities, of course, for homelessness. But on top of that, we lack the transportation, we lack services, we lack the jobs. So it's really difficult to get any buy-in between government and nonprofits to address these issues because it is so overwhelming. So where do we go from there? Besides shipping them to Charlotte to Richmond.
Right.
So somewhat of what I'm hearing is and not to talk specifically about homelessness, though we should, we have somewhat of a participation problem, right? We may have a member that isn't participating. So I'm hearing that a little bit on there on top of, yes, we should be having roundtable discussions and incorporation. So should we just go ahead?
The issue about membership that is in the packet, we are going to touch on that more.
Got it.
That is going to be a primary focus of our discussion in terms of I do think membership is the next focus in terms of steps we should incorporate in terms of how to actually improve RHP. But I guess for the first point in terms of actionable, raise your hand.
Want to add something about if there's a participation challenge for any of the people that we're not seeing regularly, it would be great to reach out to them and ask, how can this group be more valuable to you?
Right.
Because I can't think of any time where we've actually shared solution-oriented information specific to people experiencing homelessness. And I think that sector is more burdened than pretty much any sector around the table right now, especially with what's happening at HUD. So if I was in Shayla's shoes, I think I would be making the same decision, like there's more emergent things that I need to deal with right now. But if we can find ways that this group would be more helpful, that would be.
They're short staffed, they've got to be.
I think the first action item is to talk to Shayla. And if she doesn't have the time, if she's overwhelmed, then she might have a suggestion of someone that could sit at the table and bring back perspective, because we used to have someone that
Was Anthony.
was very regularly here, and I would submit that some rather significant projects actually came out of the fact that Anthony was sitting at the table with the county, who was sitting at the table with a not-for-profit developer, and we ended up with a great. So if it's a time thing for her, then maybe she's got an alternate, or could suggest someone else. Because I've felt this now for the last year that we haven't focused on it around the table. And it seems obvious, just because we don't have someone specifically focused on that.
So I know Katie wants to talk a little bit about membership on the back end, and this is just kind of a free flow conversation on it a little bit, but what we're hearing, at least I'm hearing, is that we need to go through our list, determine who's not showing up regularly, and ask what we can do to help. Right? Is that what I'm hearing?
And maybe even take a look back at ourselves about how we bring in new people and make sure that they, understand what their role is here, how it can help them. To be, or doing that initially, because, maybe Sheila, I don't know, but maybe Sheila came, said, this is about, I don't have the time. So this would be maybe a great exercise.
Orientation and expectations kind of thing?
Well, like I sat next to Greg almost the whole time, and he always told me what to do and say and everything, so I felt like
I feel like I need orientation.
yeah.
I came in during COVID and I didn't know anybody, and the housing world.
You're doing a great job.
Really, she.
Yes.
You good?
Just to go on the first point of action.
I got a nod from Ruth, so just.
I guess to go on the first point of actionable steps, the partnership with UVA, although it says partnership with UVA, this is an idea, a concept of things we could possibly do in terms of how to, because what we need now, we're talking about expanding, or how we're sharing information, creating a place to where how the information is reviewed, how it's being collected, how it's being put together. Obviously, someone needs to facilitate that and manage that. I don't want to put any extra work on you guys on your end to do that besides just sending information over. So I'm proposing that the visitor role at the TJPDC takes on this role on top of the things that I'm currently doing. Because besides the housing summit, it's pretty much enhancing and improving communication and capacity for the TJPDC and the RHP. And one of the ideas I have with that is that if the TJPDC decides one day that they don't want to renew the visitor role position, then that position is vacant, and we don't have someone who can do the back end for the RHP. And so I do know that there are 3 other positions in our region. CRHA has one, PHA has one, Habitat for Humanity has one, and it's in terms of just reaching out to them and revising their VAD, their VISTA assignment description, and including the responsibility of the communication and upkeep for the RHP members in the partnership. That is an idea that could possibly happen, but I do know that the TJPDC renewed their position for another additional year, so we don't have to worry about that issue right now. But this is something that's going to be on the time, on your minds when that time does come, in terms of who we need to facilitate and manage our, our communication and our resources.
Let me just say that this is a hell of a bar. We need to find a way to position that.
Going on to the second point, I did reach out to the UVA Career Center as well. I'm waiting to hear back the response in terms of opportunities and what they might have to say in terms of partnerships or just programs available.
Come to the architecture school as well?
I haven't reached out to them yet. That I was recommended to reach out to them as well. I will be doing that. I heard they do have a lot of great opportunities.
But I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Because
Oh, that'd be great.
Lots of students that would be very interested in this.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it seems like this should be.
And then
Yeah.
There's a lot of creative activity that goes on, and if we could get very specific.
Yeah.
Something about it to do.
Now that we have someone to manage the communication, now in terms of funding wise, we need to increase local support and diversity funding sources. Obviously, we know that federal funding is kind of up in the air right now in terms of what's being withheld and what's coming out and then how to get things. It's a lot more competitive. So if we could seek local government and private sector partnerships to supplement federal funding, which is often more competitive and restricting, I think that'll help us in the long run in terms of maybe increasing our budget in the end. And another question to that is for you guys, in case you guys have any idea, are there underutilized or regional grant opportunities or alternative financing models we should try to explore more?
I mean, how much does Virginia Housing participate on like the admin side for funding mechanisms? Do they do any at all, or?
You're talking about for the budget for the RHB?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't think we have any.
No,
That's why we don't ask them?
that's not one of the available grants.
They don't have any of those.
They have grants for specific projects.
They have a $5,000 a year event, right?
We
get those.
We use that for networking events and for the summit. And then there's admin as a part of some of the grants we've applied for specific projects.
Yeah.
But not just an operating expense, no.
Well, let's create a project.
I was gonna say.
I mean, we have a current project that they're helping fund, which is the housing study.
But it's not a line item for operational expenses.
No.
Right.
Any feedback?
Question is it about, was it specifically around operational or was it beyond that too?
It's simply just increase local support and diversity funding sources. So in general, other opportunities besides federal funding.
Are you talking
For
about?
operation.
Operations for the RHP. Yes.
I think more broadly, we need to workshop funding for projects, for admin, for all sorts of support for all of the different organizations. And I think that's the same problem that we have where, yeah, there's no admin dollars that you can apply to, it's difficult to find. But then also workshopping, grant opportunities and different funding sources, working together on collaborating, how do we make some of these projects come to fruition?
Has anybody discussed membership fees for members
We've been kicking that can down the road for years. And
or sponsorships for other than events?
Yeah, and it was included as a question in the member survey that we conducted last year, and there was some positive feedback to that. I think it's something that we can absolutely discuss again.
I think the struggle is the how. How do we break it up and then the how much, right? To go into it and what entity, pays X dollars, does nonprofits pay different than for profits and so forth and so forth and so on. The local government portion of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ruth, is based on the number of residents in the jurisdiction, right? So that's a simple formula for the local government. We seem to fall apart when we sit down and talk about, well, how do we get, George, how much does his sector pay to participate in this and so forth and so on. And he's got money, so we're gonna be leaning pretty heavy on that.
And hard, man.
I never see the cash. But so if you're gonna ask a business, whether it's profit or nonprofit, we need to make sure that we're asking them prior to their budget season. Because that's generally when they're gonna allocate those funds for the next year.
So when's your budget season?
Well, our budget season is we start in around August for the next year. So you need to make sure that you're talking to Peter, because he's very instrumental in our budget season.
So I didn't mean to put you on the spot, George.
No, not at all. I mean, I think this is great, but do you have someone that writes grants, Peter?
Yes.
And they research grants, so you got that covered. That's great. And someone that fundraiser, someone that markets and raises funds.
Not for the RHP now.
Okay, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be a paid position, because I know that's tough. But you could look for someone as either a board member or a committee member, maybe not a board member, but a committee member that may They may be very well versed in marketing and raising funds, a fundraising type of person. Other boards I've served on, we've done that. And so.
So that's suggesting a very active role for a board member.
Yeah, or someone that has that time to do that. That's
Right.
that's key. You want someone to do that, that can go to these big companies. And, you know, I'm talking about like Hershey or Hollister on our side of the mountain, other places that can do that, places on this side that can do the same thing. Again, making sure we're hitting those places at the right time so they can include those in their budget.
The other thing you can do in terms of membership is put it at a minimum and then let everybody else, if it's like it could really be a donation, couldn't it? Or is it?
So that gets a little complicated with accounting. Contributions to the TJPDC need to be like sponsorships. If you need it for tax deductible purposes, it'll have to go through the TJPDC Corporation, which is a nonprofit. We can make it work.
Right, so if you're looking for fundraising, you would need to make that work, right? And then, but if you made the membership be like, oh, minimum membership to be a member is $50. And then, people who have more in their budget to donate more, to give more, could do that, just up it up. And then you could also put, just have an ask for all of the board members to find some people who would donate, just do advocacy in their neck of the woods and say, not just the government, but, other businesses that might be supportive of the, affordable housing specifically, so.
One thing that we could do is just set up a sponsorship set of levels for all sponsorships of the RHP, and then have like the minimum one for one of the smaller ones be like the suggested sponsorship for all RHP members. And then they can choose to sponsor at a higher level, and then outside parties could also sponsor without being a member.
It's similar to what we did with the
summit. Yeah.
Right. So to George's point, other boards that I sit on, you're either there to give or you're either there to get, right? So that's usually how that works.
Against the membership content of organizations. So the many different boards that I sit on, and I wouldn't say we need to do like a sliding scale, like the banking industry pays this much and property management institute needs to pay this much, whether it's a flat fee or not. I don't know how much that really would float the boat, depending on what the dollars and cents of that looks like.
Well, I think a good first start to that is to figure out, we're kind of getting into our budget season, right? Is to first figure out what our next fiscal year's budget is going to look like, right? And then kind of map it backwards. But we just had a conversation about homeless folks, right? A homeless organization to get here, more than likely they do not have a ton of capital to work with, right? So there has to be some sort of sliding scale, or it's a minimum 250, whatever the number is, and then some other additional sponsorship thing. But we've been tossing around how to do this for years, and we could never seem to come up with a solution that was satisfactory to everybody. So I'll speak for Ned here because I'm sure he'll be willing to do this. I mean, if we need to, re-engage this again, either at the executive committee level or create an ad hoc just to kind of folks to analyze this and bring something back to the full board, that might be something we could take a look at. This is a thought. I know we're going a little bit off target here.
I like everyone, chiming in when you can. Yeah, I really do appreciate it. Just getting your thoughts down in terms of the direction we need to go. Yeah, obviously the housing summit is a great opportunity to meet this person, this theoretical person out there in terms of just, partnership wise. So make sure you talk to everybody. I guess go on to the next point in terms of on the actionable steps, the quarterly thematic focus areas. This is kind of more so just try to get our brains turning in the sense of, hey, what should we focus on? I know it was mentioned up earlier, the rural versus urban concept. So should each quarter prioritize a specific housing issue? You know, either affordable housing development, tenant protections, housing equity, financing models to maintain the strategic focus and measurable progress. So if by each quarter we focus on a different particular area, by how successful that is, and we get the total sum estimate by each quarter, then we can actually see if the RHP is actually getting quantifiable, you know, progress or success where we can actually measure it. Is this an idea you guys want to do, or you know, or interested in terms of how we should approach our mission and goals for the RHP? It could be wrong, it could be yes. This workshop session is for you guys, and that's one of my main concern is your input and what you guys decide how the RHP should move forward.
Look, was that a raised hand or you were?
No.
Okay, got it.
It's scratching.
Anybody on that?
Well, that takes us right back to round tables. Theme.
So,
So that we regularly interact on subjects of the most relevance.
It'd be nice to have a list of things and then be able to vote on what were the priorities.
That's what I wrote down too, is vote on what the topics are. We'll get totally done.
I mean, part of what's needed, and we've watched this for years, and we've had this great speakers committee, but they're looking for subject matter. And there's nothing like helping organize a round table to have the round table come to be.
So we're talking lunch and learns.
Yeah.
What we're talking.
I think that's,
And in the, for everybody here in the executive committee meeting, we spent a little bit of time talking about that because we did this during COVID and found them to be very successful. We had anywhere between 50 to 100 people attending virtually, which is a pretty good turnout for a lunch and learn. To the point about topics, it's also looking at the budget, right? Just putting my fiduciary hat on, this becomes staff time, right? So in order for them to be successful, I think they need to be looked at similar to mini summits where there's sponsorship opportunities for folks or entities to sponsor it. But I think maybe this is a great opportunity to kind of throw out a couple of high-level topics that maybe staff can look at to come back with suggestions for lunch and learns, either quarterly or monthly. And there's a bunch of really smart people at the table here, so I'm going to start calling on some folks to chime in if they would like to. I know Dave is super smart, so I'm probably going to call on you first. Good. That's the problem with being as tall as you are. I can see over everybody else. So seriously, topics for lunch and learn. I think this would be a good chat for us to have. We spent a lot of time in the executive committee, so just throw out what kind of topics do we think we need to try and focus on?
Depending on the timeline, I think everyone is sensitive to the current federal landscape. And not that what we say one day won't necessarily be different the next day, but there is a lot to be tracking, and I think that could be valuable.
So back to Caden's conversation or question about funding, right? That would be, you know, what are a roundtable or a lunch and learn, bringing some experts in to talk about alternate funding options. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think those are two different topics in my mind. One set of topics is what are the implications of either cuts in federal funding, like what sources of funding come in to support the work that are already happening in the community, so we know what's potentially on the table. And then there's a second conversation around alternatives that we could need to explore, because we know it's not going to be the same in the future.
You think we can cover that in one session, or is that two separate?
no, it's two. One, what's going on with that? But it affects every single project, no matter public or private. What's going on?
And it's
with
not
that? Can we get speakers to?
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
How do you how do you bring experts into a room that there is no experts for right now? Because nobody, or maybe Sunshine has some thoughts on that, but
Well, I think there are, even if, I think get your point that there, like, no one knows, no one has a crystal ball. But there are a lot of folks tracking a lot of different aspects of the implications and what's on the line. And contemplating the cascading impacts. And I think it would be helpful for everyone to hear what's at risk.
TJPDC has a legislative guide, so he would be, I mean, it's not his job to kind of track stuff.
He's tracking state level space,
General
not
Assembly.
federal.
But the state Virginia housing is scratching their head like everybody else, and a lot of money flows through there, so that's.
And it's not just about projects, just to be clear, like, because like, I'll go back to homelessness conversation.
Right.
For example, you know, I've been on call with Shayla multiple times over the last few weeks. Talking about the flow of funding to support the COC and what the implications are there. So there are a lot of education.
So that's timely, right? So putting something like that together is probably on the front end of a wish list. The question becomes, you know, from a staff's perspective, how do we actually do that, right? How do we actually put something together relatively quickly, which quickly I think is a couple of months, right? Or a month to two. I mean, any further thoughts on
Well,
that?
I guess part of the reason I'm advocating for this is frankly, I think we are collectively facing existential level threats around the federal funding landscape right now. And I think it behooves us all to be fully aware of what that looks like, so that if you deem that you want to take action in terms of advocacy to your legislator, that you have the information to do so. And I don't want to advocate for anyone's position, that's not the role that I'm going to play, but I would offer to volunteer to work with staff to set something up in a timely manner. And I can brainstorm with them around who the right folks would be in the room to be able to share information.
Are you thinking some federal elected folks too, or just?
Possibly,
Yeah.
because sort of state level, you know, there are lots of folks.
Well, in that case, then that's where David would be helpful, because he has the relationships at the state level anyway. David is the liaison. Hey, great.
Okay.
Is this helpful? Is this what you're looking for? Okay.
Yes, this is really helpful.
So any other lunch and learn topics?
Well, I'm looking forward to the presentation tomorrow on the discussion on land banks and funds and to see what might come out of it that we could potentially replicate here. I know there's conversations already happening in land banks with the city and elsewhere. It's a potential topic that could impact the whole region.
That's also an item in the RHP strategic plan that has not been addressed yet. And the RHP strategic plan is through 2025, which is this year. So it needs to be evaluated as whether or not it's a priority.
Keith, I think tomorrow's summit's gonna spin out some topics that, whether you mention that in the closing, you know, if anybody got any subjects for lunch and learns, or whether, you know, you get it in the comments, or whether it's obvious in some of the sessions, but I'll bet you will subjects that people want to talk further.
I agree, Greg, and I'm gonna ask Ruth a question here in a moment. Part of us frankly was gonna say, should we have punted this meeting till after the summit? But we decided not to do this because this topic is important, and it's important for Kate and staff to start hearing some of this. As I said in my intro, tomorrow is also going to be very informative of that. Ruth,
Yes.
I know we have a survey set up.
Yes,
Is it highly editable at this particular point, or are we?
it is, but it also includes a question about what topics related to solutions for affordable housing would folks like to see the RHP provide educational opportunities for, and that's a pretty open-ended question.
So should we fine tune that? If everybody thinks lunch and learns are a good use of this body and a tool. Should we refine that a little bit to Greg's point and make that a little bit more specific about lunch and learns and what topics we might add in that? How does folks feel about that?
We can go ahead and tie that right into the point 4 of expand virtual engagement opportunities. Everything you guys have mentioned in terms of lunch and learns and sessions like that, just things to vote on, topics to even address. I think that would be a great way to utilize increased like virtual sessions.
So is that something we can do? I think we can fine tune that question a little bit.
We can.
So show of hands, who's showing up tomorrow? Okay, so one of the things I'm going to ask everybody, and it'll be asked at our intro, and Ruth, when I'm off base, bring me back on again. We have QR codes all over the place, correct?
Including on the back of everyone's name tags.
And so what I would encourage everybody here, when they are in the networking moments and they're talking to folks in their sphere of influence or during the meeting, ask them, wait, that was my Yankee accent, ask them to go ahead and please fill out the survey. It is super important that we try to get as high return on the survey as possible, because that is going to inform next summit, topics for next summit, plus what we're talking about at the moment. So please encourage people to take their phone out, shoot their QR code. It's pretty intuitive and they can do it right on their phone.
Moving on to point 5, since we kind of touched on point 4, I guess point 5 is more so one of the heavier topics in terms of this is what's really going to help push things along, and it's creating a shared information hub. So the idea behind this is to establish a shared drive or document repository where members can deposit their research reports, meeting notes, and funding opportunities. And the idea we're going to do, well, behind this, we're going to create a SharePoint between all of our members where everyone can send in their information. It can be news in terms of rezoning projects, or just news you might have seen done elsewhere, statewide, nationally, anywhere that you might think would be useful to send. We encourage you to send that. And my role behind this would compile all that and building actual reports through that and potentially sending those out to some of our local representatives, to some of our policymakers in the area, which would then try to encourage us being utilized more so as a tool to help them and educate them in some of the things that we found out and that are happening in our area. And expanding our membership would help out a lot with this in terms of the expertise and some of the knowledge and information that gets put into this shared space. And so that I do think that this would be a really great thing. I want to hear you guys' input on what this could become, or in terms of that. One question I do have with this is, once we do make this, how are we going to encourage members to actively contribute to this shared information hub and actually keep resources up to date? So once this is created, how would we get people inclined to actually put information into it? That's where the challenge starts becoming, because I start checking it every week and then I don't see any new updates in it. So then I go out emailing people, and then they'll get back to me. So is this something that you guys feel like you would actively be engaged in? If not, then we need to workshop something else. It's in terms of, it can be an incomplete document. Oh, I saw a hand up on the screen.
Yeah,
Ron?
just from my perspective, I think this shared information hub I thought we were doing this already based on some past discussions that we had around providing a resource that was shared among the members, that would be a repository for past presentations, all of the different categories that you've listed here: reports, meeting notes, funding opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I would find really valuable as a sort of a, as Kevin said earlier, you come to boards to either get or give. This would be a great, for all of the giving that has happened over the course of the last few years, this would be a great place to park things like, for example, the presentation that we saw a couple of meetings ago from the land trust development that was happening in Fluvanna. I think I've got that right. we had a hard copy that we were given while we were at the meeting, but in terms of being able to return to that and reference it and then share it with someone else, that would be one of the most valuable things I think this group can do, is provide a library of resources that we each see, but the ability to turn around and shine a light on that to somebody else as a possible opportunity in our own community would be terrific.
The idea behind it was to increase communication between our meetings, because I feel partly that in between our meeting times, very little is discussed between members in terms of once we do have our actual meetings for partnership or executive committee meetings, then we might find out something during our roundtable sessions, which are very valuable, but let's actually have our roundtable discussions be, electronically, where we can just send information in. And like he was saying, once then it can be dispersed, and we can test it among our members first, which then we can add on public access to this. So if, whoever citizens in our localities are interested in, they can go and find this information themselves and read up on it once it has been, more formulated.
So the goal also would be, if I have something of pertinent information that I want to share with my fellow board members, I then have the ability to upload that like a Google Drive or something.
Yeah. Right now, we have a number of items posted on the RHP's webpage, but they're not curated in a way for people to be able to easily find things by topic. They're either related to specific projects or they're just buried within the meeting materials for any given meeting, which is sorted by year and date of the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to understand the technical end of that, but is that, do we have the infrastructure?
We could use SharePoint to do it, yes.
It definitely would have to be curated, as you said, then obvious, I think also if you had new additions to the collection, we're posting about that, so we could go, oh yeah, that's where that is, and because it's not, no one's gonna put anything in it if you can't find it or if it's not useful. So, those are just the challenges there. And then as turnover happens, that might be where, the orientation, so this is where all the good stuff is. And we want you to put your good stuff in there too, and we'll let you know when good stuff gets in there so you can pull it.
So you're saying updates and reminders of when it like it can be like a weekly update, just like an email list of saying, hey, if you have any information sent or once things have been submitted, like a weekly update of saying, hey, here's what has been turned in this week, like on Monday morning of the past week.
Got new stuff in the archive.
Okay.
A presentation on what's going on in Washington.
Okay.
And I do think that would be helpful for us as a nonprofit. We can government that, oh, Green County is working on this, this could work for us. You guys want to check this out or something.
One thought on that, I don't know if y'all, along those lines of maybe structuring lunch and learns or something. Instead of, maybe the SharePoint becoming more of a black hole of stuff. Those are good ideas to organize it too, but another idea might be, if there's a topic every quarter, you could have folks contribute towards that topic and then, build out from that. So it might be a more structured way. Just a thought.
All right, well, we got to the main point of this workshop meeting, and we're talking about membership. So, and I do want to point out on the strategic plan, objective 4.1, it's on page 10, if you look it up on the PDF, but it does state that the membership will revise bylaws and membership to encourage diverse and dynamic participation. And obviously we've noticed that there's a participation problem. And so that needs to be addressed and needs to be revised. And I think starting off our membership will help with that. And so one of the things I have with this is how do we currently assess membership engagement? What metrics should we use to measure participation and contributions? It's all the things you guys have already stated before. And then We need, I think also to add on to this, in terms of how do we measure these things, we need to define clear expectations for participation, including meeting attendance, which you guys have stated, contributions to discussions, and involvement in community initiatives. Contributions into discussions is almost irrelevant because we do have our roundtable sessions. And but I guess involvement in community initiatives is like, we need to know like what are some things that are happening in the area, and if they're less inclined or not attending any meetings, then obviously they're not participating. And then I guess one thing we could ask is, how should members be removed if that does happen? But by increasing our membership size, we do have people to come in and replace the ones that have left. So I know, you know, our homelessness sector, you know, that area needs to be focused on. We can't just get rid of a member when not having someone in with expertise to address that issue.
I'll jump in on that. I think that's somewhat of us failing to set expectation and failing to do the orientation. I think one of the great things that came out of this conversation was the orientation, which I don't think we've ever had, right? We've never had an orientation.
Not a
system.
formal process for orientation, no.
Like if you come on the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, there's like a formal orientation package and sort of.
Yeah, I've occasionally done an overview of the RHP presentation at the next RHP meeting when we've had new membership, and I've also met with folks offline prior to their first meeting, but there's not a set of documents or guidance to share with new RHP members currently. I do have a board manual that was created through the strategic planning initiative we did last year. But it was not reviewed by the full RHP, and I would like to have that done before utilizing it.
So that sounds like we've got a bit of a donut hole there.
Yeah. I also know the chair has met offline with folks who are joining the RHP more recently.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in on that.
Well, it's fine. I think you kind of cleared up what we need to do going forward is if we do have new members and to the current members to establish expectations moving forward in terms of what we would like to see from them in terms of contributions and just participation to the RHP. But next question in that same subject of just membership wise, how do we expand and diversify the membership? I think the one thing at the bottom question of this is I'm kind of interested in case you guys might have some input on this, is what barriers prevent potential members from joining or engaging with the RHP, and how can we address them? So obviously, what's keeping people from not wanting to join if it is mentioned to them or they do have knowledge about it? And once they have joined, what do you say are some of the ways why it might seem like they're less inclined to participate?
I think we need clear messaging. This very, very simple mission statement that you can relate to people as to what the benefits are. Because once that was laid out to me, I said, oh, I'm not gonna wait what we're doing here. But it took me a while to figure it out. I'm thinking.
And time commitment and.
Yeah.
What are the roles and responsibilities?
Similar to Ken's point is what's be clear on what's the value add and like, I think a specific idea is for everybody to be clear on what specific things have happened in the area that can be tied or attributed to the RHP. I can help people understand and, the involvement in the RHP produce this, produce this result for the community. So therefore, if I'm involved, I can produce this result for the community. Because at the end of the day, that's what people are looking for, involvement.
Is there discussion about yearly goals so that, there's set agenda topics for the quarterly?
Yeah, on the strategic plan of 2022 through 2025, there is goals and missions clearly stated in, the rhetoric, but in terms of how we accomplish some of those, no. And that's what this workshop is planning on doing, is addressing some of these areas where we have been, for, lesser words, lacking in trying to get them done. And so with you guys' input, and which is very helpful, by the way, we do have some new ideas on how to approach the subject matter in terms of trying to improve the RHP. So I do appreciate this.
I would welcome having an annual work plan for this group.
One other question. This is all, I mean, I understand the regional aspect of this, but there may be best in class, expertise that are outside the region. Maybe you've talked about this already, but is there any opportunity for networking across the country? I know when I can't remember what year it was, but I was invited to a forum at University of Pennsylvania. And they had a lot of other institutions participating, including UVA, where we talked about the role of anchor institutions in the community. And each institution talked about how they are engaged with their community. Some were more focused on economic development, some were more focused on housing, et cetera. But there was a lot of information to see how other communities dealt with very similar problems. So maybe I'm wrong, but there's seems sometimes a lot of talking about the same thing as opposed to if areas outside of this immediate area have dealt with things in a more successful way than we can look at.
I know that this is a national problem and we're not the only community trying to address it. I am sure there are opportunities to learn from others in other areas outside of Virginia. I know for other maybe more higher profile projects, we've sent folks to other cities, other states to go learn what they're doing. And that's not outside of the realm of possibility for this group either.
But even in terms of the lunch and learn, I have contacts with my colleagues at other universities, and they always ask that question to see what people do.
So I'm a part of a couple of national cohorts. One is put by UW, University of Washington, Portland State. And we're looking at the same things. So it's a great idea for a roundtable discussion. One of the unique things about this body, when we created it so many years ago, there was nothing that looked like us at that time, right? That used these 4 pillars, right? They were usually only universities or governments or nonprofits. There was never the 4 pillars together at a table. That I think has changed. I think you're starting to see that happen across the country, but through your resources and others, I think that's an excellent lunch and learn where you bring in experts from around the country and say, okay, so how are you dealing with this? Much like the federal funding evaporating, how are we dealing with this? And what's our best practices to navigate that? So I think that's a great idea.
Chair.
Yes, George, wanted to jump in?
I just, did you want to say something? I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say, and we had a lot of good ideas about someone accepting maybe a board position, but what I was going to say is that, and they said they had to understand, but yes, I think before they accept a board position or you offer one to them or they think about it, they do definitely have to understand the time commitment, which is what someone said, but they do have to understand what's expected of them. The orientation package that someone had said, they definitely need to go through that to understand that as well. I believe in the that they have to understand what is the SLA of what they're expected to do, and they sign that and say, yes, I am committed to doing this, and I understand the repercussions if I don't attend regular board meetings. And they have someone that if they don't attend the set, like after 2 times, they have the chair or someone talk to them after 3 times. If you're going to have an organization like that, you have to do that. You don't want to do that, but you have to make sure that they're participating. And if they can't, then maybe they need to have someone else maybe to either fill in with them or they have to drop off. And it's evident they can't participate and do what they said they could do because maybe something's come up, a life event. And then they have to understand the mission statement of what the organization's trying to do. So that was just all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Just,
I'm sorry.
Now, mine is off topic. Do we have another business piece after this? Or-
it has none in it, but is there something you want to talk about?
Yeah,
We have a round table. Do you want to talk it during the round table or?
It's one or the other. It doesn't really matter. I mean, this is a slight directive.
So is it, if you don't mind,
Now
just-
membership, I don't want to go off topic. Yeah.
well, we're beyond our time slot on this, so if it's related to what Caden's working on, great. If not, we can maybe catch it during round table. It's your call. Your call. Caden, you got everything you need?
That was all the points that I had. So, I'll go back through my notes and, obviously meet with Ruth and everyone else in the housing team in terms of best moving forward. And I'll keep you guys updated in the process, whether it's via email directly or in mass.
I do have one strategic plan question. Are we using Spark Mill to help us with this, or we're doing this internal?
Well, that is a question for the RHP. Because of the type of grant that we're using for the housing study through Virginia Housing, we cannot do the strategic plan update with the same type of grant. And I don't know that there's another one that's eligible for this current year, so we may need to either look at doing it in-house, finding another source, or just waiting a year before we do a strategic plan update.
So if I hear that right, if we wish to use a consultant, Spark Mill, who did the last one, we need to find X dollars somewhere.
Yes,
Got it. Otherwise, we're doing it internally.
yes.
What's the cost on that, roughly?
I don't know off the top how much it was last time. I
We
think-
use Spark Mill, you just used Spark Mill, right, for
Years ago.
for your car foundation. I want to say 15 grand rings a bell, but I might be a little off. 20?
Yeah.
20?
That'd be the light version.
Well, it's an update, so they did the base one for us. So I'm
I
not,
mean, Virginia Housing does have a capacity building.
That's what
grant,
you're
which they-
referring to.
That's the same one, okay.
well, clearly we don't have that kind of money as a budget at the moment. So, but I'm always in favor of hiring a consultant to help somebody through a strategic plan. Not that Caden isn't capable of doing it, he surely is, but it's always good, in my opinion, to have a second set of eyes. And particularly somebody or an entity that did our original one some years ago. So maybe we need to figure out where we can get a quote and find some numbers from them, and at
Yep.
least then the body can make its decision.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. And I will also throw out there, Caden's Vista role is through mid-August. And I will be recruiting for a new Vista.
Did you tell him he can't leave?
I did give him the option to stay
Good.
in a second year in the Vista role, but I don't know what he's doing with his life. That's up to him. But we generally would be recruiting for a new Vista between April and having that hopefully filled by June. So in the event we are recruiting for a new Vista, I will absolutely want all of your help in getting the word out there, because while it is not a position that pays terribly well, it is a incredible service opportunity for the community. And there are significant benefits that you get as serving as a Vista that you wouldn't get elsewhere. And as you know, it's incredibly useful to this group. So you all will be instrumental in helping us find a Vista.
So Caden, thank you. And we're actually starting our next thing, which would be you. So we could do,
Yeah.
thank you, Caden.
So general housing programming updates for the PDC. We did, as you know, submit a letter saying that we would like to be a third-year Vista site. And we are in the process. I submitted the Vista job description today, doing a lot of the same things that Caden has done this year, but also building on that, particularly as relates to the topics that were discussed in the executive committee meeting and that you heard about today and talked about today, really making sure that we're strengthening those networking and information sharing portions of the RHP. We also are close to starting the housing study that should be kicking off at the beginning of April. We just received the contract from Virginia Housing for the bulk of the funds that are needed for that study. And we also were awarded through Albemarle County the CDBG funds that were applied for to use towards that study. So we are very close to just being able to kick it off and engaging with all of the strategic partners on that, which is very exciting. Yes, you have a question, and you have a question.
Does that mean there's not an ask of the counties?
There is still an ask of the counties. This study is incredibly expensive, but through this study, we are also training local people, and all of you are potentially able to participate in those training sessions to be able to collect the data and update the regional housing data without having to hire a consultant every time we want to update that data. So while it's expensive on the front end, in the long run, it's going to be incredibly valuable to us.
Let me know where
I will. You had a question?
Yeah, sorry, I probably missed it in a previous meeting, but who's the consultant that is leading that?
We are going through Virginia Tech. They have, I don't remember the name of the office, but they do housing studies for a number of localities in Virginia.
So the thought then is that, so it's not an entity that has done a previous housing study in this region. So, and do we know how much they're gonna utilize the previous housing studies that the city have done, our county, TJPs?
They will be utilizing all of those, but also collecting their own data.
And they, what's the timeline?
It is going to take 1.5 years, so kicking off in April and then 1.5 years. So like, it'll definitely be done by December 2026, which is a long time. But again, we'll have actionable things prior to that. The training will take a lot of time. Sorry. I know probably a burning question that a lot of folks have asked me, have we had any housing funds stop or pause due to things going on at the federal level? No, we have not. We know other partners have. But right now, the only thing that we have seen in terms of the grants that we administer with federal funds locally has just been federal staff making sure that they have their documentation in order for all of the grants. And that's the only other update I have.
Any questions for Ruth before we go into the roundtable? So for those who have joined us for the first time, what we do is we go literally around the table, and any topic that's on your mind or what's going on in your world and your life and in your entity, be it public, private, or nonprofits, and just share with it. And I promised staff that we would be done by 5:30 because they need to get ready for the event tonight. So Lloyd, I'm going to kick off with you and we'll just work our way around the table.
Well, I'm just an alternate, so I hope Michael will have a little bit more to say, but I'll just say from my perspective, the housing debates and issues that we've had that are sort of most intriguing are ones that grow up around our new zoning ordinance, trying to figure out just what the additional capacity that ordinance gives us and gives to developers, just how that's actually going to work and what the consequences of it are. And it takes long enough for projects to get going that although we passed the ordinance 1.5 years ago, or 1 year and 3 months ago again, we're just now beginning to see some of what that means. I saw that I know some of my friends in the county have been anxious to ask me because they've got similar ordinances that they're thinking about. Been asking me, well, what's happening? And all I can say is, I don't really know quite yet. So we'll see. And that's all I was thinking about.
Well, I have some thoughts on that, but then we'll save that for an off-topic conversation. Jesse.
Yes. For those who don't know, I'm Jesse, the Board Supervisor, Nelson County. My I got two of the pillars. I'm private, I'm a home builder, do property management. And get to be a board supervisor. So, yeah, I was gonna make a joke at one point and say the amount of time we were in here, my guys framed the roof in. But that's different. I
I
think.
thought you were gonna say you got some decisions made at the county.
Yeah, we're getting there. Decisions made in the county.
He liked that.
Twice as slow.
Sunshine like that one.
Twice as slow.
I got a feeling I'm gonna pay for that one later.
So, from a housing perspective, yes, it's a constant conversation of what affordable housing looks like. We are getting a pretty serious amount of pushback from small interest in our community, small community groups, the NIMBYs of the world, and trying to, weaponize it in manners that it's interesting gymnastics as they go. This is not unfamiliar. I think some of what we're doing in the county with the rezoning is going to address some of it. I wish that we as an association could be a little bit better of an advocacy in terms of producing, like, here's a great topic, setbacks in a rural context. Okay, why do setbacks exist? Well, if you look at most of your housing stock, commercial stock, any stock at all, it's all non-conforming, about 70% of it. So what does a setback on an actual scale do for a house other than aesthetic? There's none. And so topics of that nature, are ones that I really like approaching. Why do you have a 70-foot setback? Why can't it be 50? Why can't it be on in certain zoning contexts when everything else on this street is 35 feet from the setback? Okay, we don't want to be that close, about 50, as opposed to 75. In topography areas such as Nelson County, roads were built were in the least path of resistance. And where does the house go? On one side or the other, on the top of the hill or in a cliff. So you have to be cognizant of these things. It is my hope that this organization really starts looking at those true and blue brick and mortar type pieces, because at the end of the day, we can be talking about, certainly homelessness is a real piece, and it's definitely real in both the urban and rural setting. It is probably one of the harder sales when I talk to surrounding county colleagues of explaining that to them. And I actually don't know if we could explain it well enough for it to equal some, whether that's policy or anything. We have to start seeing some of these other metrics, such as our AMI demographic in the 80%. Also, the one group that might be able to afford a house if a couple things lined up for it. And I always tell people, yes, homelessness is certainly an issue. Yes, certainly anybody who's out on the streets, this needs to be addressed. I'm sticking there in the 80% AMI and less demographic and 50% AMI and saying, these guys are tangible. They know them. It's their mechanic. It's these individuals, and trying to get that to equal policy. That's it.
William?
We've got probably 600 to 700 units that are at various stages of approval. But we got this thing called the interest rates that is still, it's a problem. And, we just having trouble making deals work right now. So, besides finishing up projects that we have under construction, we got a pretty good pipeline, but we're having trouble making it work right now. So, anybody's got any ideas on lowering interest rates or how to do it? I'm all ears today. So anyway, but everything's
It's the same idea as getting federal funding, exactly the same set of ideas.
it's just tough.
I'm looking forward to your presentation tomorrow, right? You're gonna be on a panel, if I remember correctly, right?
Hey, I don't know if I thought.
But I was actually speaking like.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you a little heads up. I don't have the magic bullet at the presentation for, but anyway, feel free to answer all the questions.
So
Ask all the questions.
I'll jump in on that. So part of the cohort, I'm part of UW, there's a gentleman that I work on, he says, there's not a silver bullet to this, there's a silver buckshot. There's not one thing that's gonna cause it all that.
Yeah.
And every time I say that, I gotta Venmo him $5. Sunshine. Thank you, William.
Hard to know where to begin, but I'll start with the tangible piece, which is Hickory Hope Apartments, 121 apartments should be, the first building should be wrapping up construction here in a couple of months, and then the remainder by the end of the summer. It's in the Southwood community, it's in Albemarle County. So that's great. Kindlewood Phase 2 started construction in January, had about a 16 to 17 month arc of development. Tied with the federal piece and sort of what William was just talking about, I was on a call recently with a developer who does both market and affordable in the Northern Virginia area, and his point was that you see a lot of things in construction right now, but there are not many starts anymore. So we are going to see a cliff in terms of production about 16, 18 months from now, or sooner. And the current environment is not contributing to the ability to get starts. So we are about to see it get worse. Just put it bluntly, just in terms of raw supply, both market and the work. What I will say is that this is a little bit of a precursor to, if we do a panel, on the federal side. Depending how things play out, like we have not had any funding except very small little bits and pieces disappear yet. But we have a lot of exposure through the projects themselves, and if that disappears, it's a huge issue for all of us, but certainly for us as an organization. Hence why I sort of focus on that right now, later focus. And then the last thing I'll say is that, we've noticed this already, but TJPDC was the last couple of cycles was the recipient of the Virginia Eviction Reduction Program funding for the region. That grant did not get renewed this year. And Piedmont Housing Alliance was the primary partner to utilize those funds to help keep people, both from a counseling perspective, but also direct assistance perspective, to keep people housed. It was a surprising notification that came 2 weeks before January 1, and it was supposed to be renewed. So we have been scrambling to keep the staff in place, get the funding to keep the staff in place, because we know that the staffing is crucial to provide that navigation, and also to find funding for direct assistance. There are requests both into the city and the county right now to kind of fill the gap for this year. I am optimistic we'll get across the finish line there, but just recognizing that's a resource that we had anticipated having for our region, which is not here.
Thank you, Sunshine. Kurt, just if you give me a moment, please. Ruth, can we go a little over without put us in a time crunch? How much time do we have over 5:30?
So the networking event starts at 5:30. However, the keynote welcome is happening at 6 o'clock. So if there are folks here who are planning to go to the networking event, we have about 30, maybe 20 minutes.
Staff there already?
We have staff there already. Gretchen will need to leave in about 2 minutes though.
Okay.
But that is okay.
Okay, good. So I just would like the opportunity for everybody to say something. So if you don't mind, we'll try to keep till about the next 10 minutes and we all can get on to the things. Kurt, you're up next. You're done.
Yes. I'm in the trenches, so I'm happy to be part of the group, so I can kind of get back out high level and see other things that are going on. Our trenches involved work with EHA, so we're involved with the remote project. The Sunshine mentioned with our first one. We're starting the new development in Southwest Street, and hopefully in one building is hinting on that. So these are all starts that would have been cleaned up years ago. And we're about to break ground with junior supportive housing now, supportive housing, supportive fixed housing. The premier circle, crossing street, we call it, we did crossing ground. So all those projects are about to start, we'll finish up. And we're working actively with our partners. That make the other ones real, but sometimes just seeing them, they come on my desk every day, so. Happy to be there with that.
You're in the trenches. Great. Last one.
Interestingly, we jointly have got 90 homes built at so far, and I'm happy that we're working on Village 3 right now. But architects are sometimes referred to as the canary in our business. And I have not been able to get anything started since the war. Projects that were keyed up. And there have been some bizarre things. I have USAID funds held hostage, which affected a bank, which affected funding of the project. I mean, it's just bizarre out there. So you've got the direct problem of whether what HUD is going to look like and what's coming in there. But the uncertainty added to the interest rates. We literally in the housing field have nothing started. The other side of my practice is luxury hospitality. And interestingly, there's some stimulus for that because there are actually people in the world who would like to invest money in the US still, but not. That's my big picture.
So it feels like 2007.
Yeah.
Margaret.
We're working on the duplexes that PDC grant is helping to fund, and the ARP money is going to, we are also working through some last details on Renaissance Ridge. And hopefully we'll start that very, very soon. I also worry about what happens if the funding gets pulled, and have been thinking about ways to fundraise for direct support for people who can't pay their electric bill, can't pay their rent. A couple of years ago when COVID supports got pulled away, we raised some money and like $60,000 went directly to people to pay those bills to keep them housed. So I think that if we can't build something for them, we can keep them where they are. So that might be something, stopgap that we could work on. So anyway. And I'm, so excited still that we're doing the planning in the county. And that housing is one of the top priorities that the county has put out there. So meters aside, we're always gonna have to, it's really a necessary thing for that group of people who can't afford, to drop $500,000 on the house. So.
I'm Kim Highland with the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation. In Fluvanna, we have the housing subcommittee starting for comp plan. Louisa is shortly behind it. We are coming close to breaking ground on our construction projects in first in Louisa County. A significant portion of our funding is being soaked up by infrastructure, much larger than what we anticipated. So that's taking out units, so then have to go back to drawing for funding on units. I am hopeful that as the pendulum swings, there's going to be a lot of recognition that what we're doing here in this room is not Sesame Street in Iraq. We are helping people, and I think some of that funding may come from full circle. I think we need to actually be prepared to hit up our local, state, and federal governments that as they restructure, we are servicing the needs of the local people, and I have focused on that strongly with both Fluvanna and Louisa counties. They have increased our funding in response because we have demonstrated that we have a lack of funding or reduced funding coming in other areas. So there is, I think, an increased awareness at our local level of the dire needs that weren't really being addressed locally before. It was our problem as a nonprofit to figure out. But I think there are things we should be doing to ramp up to hit up our local and regional and state and national legislators to fund the solutions that we can here. So that may not always be a popular opinion, but I think we have an opportunity there. Part of a significant portion of what we do has been repairs for housing, keeping people in their homes. So we did recently get a HUD award for hull repairs, that will service Louisiana, Louisa, and Nelson County. So we're hoping that's, sort of another part of the buckshot, is keeping people in their funding and making it, more stable. That's it.
Thank you. Alice, before you jump in, Emily, would you mind chiming in?
Sure. I'm Emily Dreyfus. I'm an organizer with Legal Aid Justice Center and I'm on BAR's Advisory Council, the Public Housing Association for Residents. And I was really happy to see that the County of Albemarle has put in place a dedicated funding stream for housing. $3 million is what's proposed in the current draft budget, which would go into a housing fund, and then there's some additional funds that would be from other sources of revenue. They are only proposing to level fund their rent assistance program, which we really need more of, because at this point, people only get $800 from that, and they try to piece together the rest, but I'm sure there are lots of people who don't make that. And I would love to underscore what Sunshine said about needing the Financial Opportunity Center to continue its work, because the eviction docket is a scary thing, and yeah, just keeps getting worse. I also worked with a group called the Charlottesville Albemarle Tenant Leaders Association, and we've been hearing some things about Barracks West. So if anybody happens to know about any changes at Barracks West, I would love to know, because they've been troubled for years, but it sounds significantly worse recently.
Didn't it just get sold?
That's what I heard a rumor about, yeah, but I don't know to whom and anything else.
I read about it on Jerry Miller's site.
Yeah, I believe it. So,
Okay, thanks.
Alice, thank you.
So, everyone, I'm Alice Rauscher, I'm architect for the University of Virginia. I've been an alternate for a couple of years for Colette Cheney, and although I am not happy about Colette retiring after 43 years, I'm very pleased to be here amongst all of you in this good call. So I'll be really brief and just talk about the most recent developments for our affordable housing initiative, which are related specifically to the Woodlands and 10th site. We're working, as you know, with the University of Virginia Foundation and Preservation of Affordable Housing. They had a public meeting on February 24th. The community that was well attended. The city approved a revitalization designation on Monday that will help the team secure tax credits. And excuse me, and POET is submitting their LIHTC application actually tomorrow. So additionally, the POET team is on the BAR meeting agenda on March 18th for a work session related to the site plan. That's been a little rough going, I think. I think they made it, the housing as dense as they possibly could, all affordable units. But the downside is that it's very dense and doesn't have a lot of ins and outs. So I'll stop there, except to say that we're also breaking ground on between 750 and 800 second-year student beds, which, for many years it was discussed how the university housed more of our students on grounds. Hopefully we draw the students out of the neighborhoods. So this is the first tranche of probably close to 800 beds. And as we move forward with this and check our debt capacity, the idea is to increase it to a total of about 2,400 beds. Total to house all of our second year students on records. So I know it's not specifically affordable housing, but hopefully it will help the.
Yeah.
It's almost direct. Every student you pull out of the neighborhood, there's naturally affordable housing. That's free to.
So
That's bad.
800 students will be housed on the United Corridor in 2027.
But I wish we had more time to discuss that and break it down, because I definitely have some questions about that. But we
You
have.
know where to find me.
I do. We do lock your door, you don't let me in the place. Luis,
It's more like I don't answer the phone.
Name's Luis Loyola, I'm executive director of the Piedmont Community Land Trust, and last time I shared that we were working on our second rental own property that's been acquired through PHA, and we're working on with the tenant there to actually become the owner of that home now, which is just a really exciting way to keep a model that has a lot of potential for our city on how to increase home ownership for low-income people. But the main theme for us has been capital. Access to capital has been a challenge. Been trying to reach different, from national to local to from private to public ways that capital can be accessed specifically for homeownership, specifically for the scale that we work at. And with the flexibility that we need, it's been a big challenge. It's a challenge that obviously is being seen all across the housing spectrum. But I think this is the right body to get creative on how to bring some solutions. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Dave?
Dave Norris with the Carr Foundation, and I announced at our last meeting that we had been working on an online housing resource guide that is now public. It was published a couple weeks ago in Charlottesville tomorrow. We put a ton of work into that a few months ago. It's great to see it online. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go to Charlottesville tomorrow's website, and it's basically about 100 different affordable housing programs and resources all in one place, very easy to access. So please be sure to check that out. Right now, it's just the city and the county, but eventually they might expand it. So we're very pleased to see that come online. We also were involved in the campaign that Emily mentioned about encouraging Albemarle County to invest more on affordable housing in their new trust fund. She mentioned there's been $3 to $4 million. We want to see that up to $10 million. I don't know if we get there, but and it's the first time Carr celebrated our 100th anniversary this year. It's the first time in Carr's history that they've actually spoken out on a local government budget line item. So really stepping up to speak out for affordable clients.
And as a fellow real estate agent in the room, it's interesting to find that at the summit tomorrow, real estate agents hold the largest group of attendees. So I'm happy to see us engaging in a big way. Michael.
Yeah, main city councilor for Charlottesville. As Lloyd mentioned, just to kind of piggyback what he said, we're definitely seeing after we passed our zoning reform that, there hasn't really been that much new supply, and our largest multifamily projects were approved before the zoning rewrite. So as others touched on, I think we're seeing that in a lot of ways, zoning may not even be the largest controlling variable for supply. It's about capital markets, financing, and I wonder too how much monopolization in terms of the building industry itself, as well as the supply chain network of the materials they need. So that'll be interesting to see continue to play out. Like everyone else, I think, we're just kind of watching for uncertainty at a federal level. For us so far, it's just a lot of uncertainty as opposed to anything that's specifically being cut. But I think we anticipate not this budget cycle, but next budget cycle will probably be a flood of our nonprofit partners coming to us with additional requests after losing money. And quite frankly, as a locality, we simply don't have the money or revenue raising abilities to fill that gap. And so I think that will be a reality that we face. But I think we could reasonably anticipate increased needs around affordable housing and homelessness. Even just around 600,000-700,000 people using health insurance in Virginia through Medicaid is a decent probability, as well as some changes through HUD. In terms of our budget and affordable housing, we're still maintaining our $10 million a year annual commitment, even though our population is a fraction of Albemarle's. But and I think one of our last council meeting, we had an interesting discussion about the UVA Affordable Housing Initiative at 10th and Portland, and that I don't think the community broadly understood this, but we always anticipated that in order for that project to be competitive for low-income housing tax credit financing and have the level of affordable units that the community expected, they would have to request several $1 million from the city of Charlottesville. That'll be the same case for the Albemarle projects. So we have formally received a request for that project for the city to invest several $1 million. That is not currently in our budget. We were beyond 10 million this year for investments for other affordable housing projects we were already committed to. And so I think that will be an interesting challenge going forward is how that develops, because the city has, extreme capacity limitations even before the uncertainty at the federal level.
Thank you.
Michelle Walmsley, Habitat for Humanity. Dan sends his regards. He is currently having a discussion with our executive committee about our budget, and what an interesting season it is to be doing your budget. While you're trying to think about tariffs, what you're gonna be able to spend, what you're not gonna be able to spend, federal funds you're gonna be able to access or not. And so that's something we're all wrestling with. I know across the board right now, I feel like a broken record talking about federal funding, but it is the case. So far, I think most folks are aware of our $29 million price award, to continue the work at Southwood. Obviously, it's a reimbursement grant like all of the significant federal funding that most of us are dealing with. We continue to receive some positive signs that that's moving forward. It's fully obligated. The grant agreement is signed and we continue to move forward. So we're going to keep planning in a hopeful manner and also responsibly. So in the meantime, it also seems like a good opportunity, Greg, given that it's your last meeting, to say thank you. Again, I know my colleagues are so excited to be working with you again as we move forward. And future village planning, we're about to start some land development work in Village 3 and continue building in Village 2. We expect most of those homes to be finished in Village 2 later this year and look forward to that dedication. In the meantime, we are hopeful to have additional starts in the city in multiple locations.
Thank you. Tom.
Joe McCloskey, Green County Planning Commission. So I am alternate for Ron Williams, so he may have more to add for Green, but there's currently no priorities around affordable housing in the county. There's even, we have growth areas, but with limitations on water resources. So that's kind of the focus for the county. We've not had direction from the supervisors to change any zoning ordinances for our residential zoning. So it's not a priority. I guess at this time, I would say, I work with Feeding Green and there is a need. There are a build or two apartments where, they're relying on Feeding Green to, to have money to pay for rent. So, but yeah, so that's, I know the unhoused is very low in the county, but it is there is some, but it's really the affordability that's the issue in Green.
Ron, you want to add something to that? You got to unmute yourself, buddy.
John did a good job of kind of giving you the status of where things are in Green. But one thing I just wanted to add is this will also be my last meeting for the Regional Housing Partnership. I've got a medical diagnosis that's going to take a toll, and I've stepped down from the Planning Commission, and consequently, I'm going to be stepping down from this role as well. So John will be Green's representative going forward, and I'm sure he can work with you to select an alternate as well.
You're going to be missed, and you're in our thoughts.
Thank you.
George, you're last.
Oh, I am, okay. I'm George Ballou with the UVA Credit Union. I run the mortgage division. I'm here for Peter Holman. He's having a great time at Disney World, so with his kids and family. So I wish I was there. It's been 20-some years since I've been here, so we're doing everything we can to try to help first-time home buyers. It's very difficult right now. It has been for a few years. Just the price of housing has been tough for them. We can get them pre-qualified. They just can't find a house that they can buy. We're working towards getting them federal home loan bank money, which goes very quickly. There's a little over 30 million in what they call set aside funds, which are for 80% area median income or lower. If they raise that from 15 to 17 or 12.5 to 17.5 this year, and that's for first-time home buyers. Now they also have Workforce Housing Plus, which is for above 80 to up to 120% area median income, and that's $15,000. It's a grant, so it's a grant for them. They do not have to pay that back. The set aside for the first-time home buyers is a program. After so many years, it's forgivable, so they do not pay that. What can the grant be used for? It can be used for down payment, closing costs, different things. They also there's other funds that can be used. They have money for renovation fees. If they want to go that route, it's renovation cost, it's up to 25,000. And there's 14 million roughly left in the workforce plus grant, but it goes very quickly.
And to be clear, that's for the entire southern region. That amount of money, like that's the Federal Home Loan Bank's footprint is the entire.
I mean, that's what they have total for
That's right.
ours. We're out of Atlanta.
Right.
Yeah, right. And we get so much money allocated, but we never get to use all of ours because the bigger boys that have a lot more people represented in loan officers, they go through theirs quickly. But we did about 20 or 25 the last time we allocated it, so which was pretty good for us. The other thing that we will get that will affect us as affecting the builders is the fact that the cost of lumber will go up since the tariff for Canada mainly. And that would hurt us, especially with people wanting to build because we have a construction firm loan and renovation loans. And the other thing with FHA lending, because they're going to cut 50% of HUD, which is about 4,000 employees, and we do FHA lending. So it hasn't hit us yet, but we are a direct lender, so we can insure our loans. So we're not sure how much it's going to impact us right now. And then the cost of insurance going up, even though that's mainly on the West Coast, it will affect our borrowers on the east mid as it comes across to the East Coast.
We're seeing that hit the ground now.
Yeah, okay. And so it's going to make it more expensive. Another thing for first-time homebuyers to contend with the cost of their homeowners insurance. So one thing that we've been able to do, I know Peter told you about the Hometown Heroes, which is 100% financing. We also have an I-10 product, which is the independent tax identification number. We do that as well. We had funding for it, was great. That was gone, so we built our own program at the credit union. So we do that for the population that needs that. And then we also do for through Fannie and Freddie, the Home Possible and the Home Ready loan. So we are really dedicated to try to find ways to help first-time home buyers. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know we're substantially over, and those who are doing the networking need to feed it to the comment out. And see everybody tomorrow. Don't forget to go ahead and talk to your folks and scan in survey. Thank you.
Adjourn.